Hey everybody, welcome to Nerd Nights. Okay, so we actually do this every single month. If you guys want to get a quick discount ticket for next show, this deal goes off the board at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. You can get tickets to our very next show by following that URL down below. They're $5. We have the free speakers talking about daddy longlegs, talking about where wild animals go. So how do you actually track really elusive animals with new technology? And finally, something like very near and dear to all of us here, the sculptures in the mudflats in Emeryville, of which we have, I believe, one more remaining original sculpture. We're going to have someone from East Bay yesterday come in and talk about the history of those and where they're going. And so it should be actually a really good show again. This deal goes off the board at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. If you want to hear about our events, definitely join our email list and our Facebook page. You go right to eastbay.nerdnight.com to get on our mailing list. We send you only 2 emails a month, we promise. You can also follow, we have to do Facebook like everyone else. You can also follow us on Facebook and get invites to all of our events. Also, we're playing trivia today, and trivia actually is all related to the talks tonight. When you are finished with your trivia, please turn them in by the end of the second break. So the break after the second talks, right to the Oakland Public Library table in the back. You can do it sooner too if you want, okay? And we will announce the winners, hopefully after the third talk. Hey, let's get rolling. So our first talk is talking about maintaining old 80s and 90s arcade games. And I was thinking about, why is this still relevant and still important? And it's a really simple answer. 80s and 90s arcade games were more fun than current games. They were simpler, but they were inherently more fun. I spent, God knows, so much of my time, my freshman year in college, playing the original Star Wars. And you could just sit there and you could play a pretty simple but entertaining game for hours at a time. This slide totally won't work, and I wish it might work. I'm not going to play it because it already crashed our system 4 times, but I played Tecmo Super Bowl on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and I got really good, and I could beat the computer every single time, and I kept playing, and then people started to do other things like this video, which I'm not going to play. You'd hand the ball to Bo Jackson, the greatest athlete in the history of professional video game sports, and you'd have him run around for the entire quarter just because you could, because that's how the game worked. If you got good enough, you wouldn't get tackled. And it was fun. You would not do that necessarily with modern games today, but it was fun to play the same game in different ways. And this is kind of a thing now, going back and looking at old games and trying to play them in new and unique ways. So Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, kind of the basis of one of our big trivia questions tonight. So Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, people actually play this game blindfolded now. And there's a tournament every year where you have to try to beat not one boxer, the entire game while blindfolded, and the record was recently set, 35 minutes to beat the entire game blindfolded, which is actually pretty amazing. Super Mario Bros. Is one of the greatest games of all time, maybe the greatest game of all time. So we've all beaten Super Mario when we were younger, but now people do things like, what's the highest possible score you can get in a level of Super Mario Brothers? And so this guy scored 113,000 points on level 1-1 of Super Mario because he did this until there was 4 seconds left, and then ran and jumped over the flag at the very end and got that huge score. And so that's awesome, this gigantic score for Super Mario, but then you can take that idea of trying to get this crazy score for a game and you can invert it. So this is the lowest possible score on Super Mario Bros. Okay? This guy played level, it's gonna keep going. Oh, I think it works. Hold on, we'll see if it gets all the way there. He's looking, he's watching. This is the hardest move in that level. Yes, totally. Yeah, exactly. So this is how you score only 500 points on level 1-1. It is literally the lowest score you can get while still finishing the level. And the way you do that is you have to time this jump so perfectly that you don't get that coin on the right end, but you also don't fall in the pit. And the difference between those two things is 1 pixel. So you have to get within 1 pixel correct and then run to the flag and wait. This is true. You have to wait for the timer to go to 1/60th of a second. And if you go at 2/60ths of a second, you get a few too many points. So you go right to the end and get the lowest possible score. To talk about more awesome games, please help welcome Sean and Meg from High Scores Arcade in Alameda.
I noticed you didn't try to say our last name. Hey everybody, I'm Meg, and this is Sean Noche. And please join me in welcoming Jonathan Williams, who's the manager of our arcades, of which there are 2 in Hayward and Alameda. So hopefully some of you guys have been there, and if not, hopefully some of you guys will choose to come. So we have about 20 minutes to talk to you today. I don't know where I'm pointing this at. Just to the air. Okay. There we go. So we have 20 minutes or so to talk to you tonight, and we're pretty excited because we have a lot of history. What? We're pretty excited to be talking to you tonight. We're going to approach our presentation pretty much like we approach real life, which is Sean's going to do most of the talking. I'm going to constantly interrupt him, and then Jonathan's going to do whatever we tell him to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we've been building our collection over the last 10 years. How do we restore and maintain the games that we're running about 90 a day, 90 every single day in the summer, and then a little bit about inspiration and reimagination. Where do we go from here, and how do we bring arcade games kind of into the next wave?
Well, we've been gaming. Meg and I met each other in '99, so we've been together for a long time. We've been married for many years, 12 years. So we were gaming together. We were playing PS2. We were doing everything. We followed gaming from the inception all the way up, and we stayed relevant. We kept playing everything that was popular at the time. But around 2006, I got this bootleg version of the King of Kong. How many people have seen the King of Kong? Woo! All right. Yes. I mean, to me, it hit me. Because here I am, I'm teaching in the inner city, trying to make a buck. I see a $500 Donkey Kong that's within my range. I didn't realize that we were going to pay $500 more to ship it from Florida, and I could have got one from, right up the street. But the fact is that it just kind of changed. Something clicked with us. Meg and I started going to auctions. We started looking online, looking everywhere we could to try to get more of those games in our collection. And eventually we had 15 games in our 1,000-foot square bedroom apartment, and we just. The games had taken over us, and so it was time for us to make a change and do something else besides have it be our hobby.
By the way, that apartment was about 50% what it cost out here.
You lived like a king in New Jersey for $1,000 a month.
That one-bedroom apartment. So we decided we needed to make a move and branch out a little bit. So we actually bought a 4,000 square foot building in Burlington, New Jersey.
We did, and upon opening it, we thought people would be thrilled. Like, hey man, these guys have got the only copy in 50 miles you can play in public of Street Fighter 2. Or these guys have got a machine that can play Donkey Kong, Miss Pac-Man, all these different things that people love or loved in the past. And instead of it being an easy thing, what we found out was back in the day. I don't know if anybody here has ever heard about pinball and all the stink they made back in the 20s, 30s. Who's smashing pinball machines?
Mayor LaGuardia, if you've ever flown into LaGuardia Airport, Mayor LaGuardia took a bunch of sledgehammers to pinballs back in the 40s because they were looked at as gambling devices. So there's actually, in most pinballs of that era, there's 2 versions. There's one for certain states that have counters for the balls where you can actually, in theory, bet people for the games that you're gonna win off of your performance. And then there's another version of the same exact backlash of the pinball with no ball counter for the states that considered it illegal and gambling. So we ran into the same kind of laws that were just on the books from 1982. A lot of old fogies around town saying, well, what if this turns into the New Jersey Shore? And
we're in the hood. Like we're in the hood. Like when you go outside of our house, there's crack bags. Like we're used condoms, the whole thing. People having sex on benches. We're not in a good place. There's stores closed down.
The benches were in the cemetery.
Stores closed down.
To another level.
So New Jersey's a very, very different place than the East Bay. Even it's a different scene. So anyway, we're in this bad area, and here we are bringing in these incredibly unique games, and they just throw the book at us.
So you've got these old stuffy white guys who hand us a paper across the desk that tells us we can try to go to city council to open an arcade, but we have to get 82 signatures in 4 days, 2 of which was Saturday and Sunday. And if we got all 82 signatures, then we could show up to city council and be heard.
Now, mind
and
you,
be considered.
we moved in 40 of these machines with our own 2 hands. You know, we bought the building, in an inadvisable area, right between Trenton, the area I'm from, and Camden. And if you guys Google that one day, just Google Trenton Camden crime, just for fun. YouTube pop some porn. So we're there, and it's a rough situation. We've got to get it open. So I put on glasses and a mustache. I sat outside and I waited until I could find every single one of these 82 people while making it work during the weekend, and we got it. And we opened on August 30th in 2010.
Hey, so we opened. Woohoo! So that's a pretty good testament to the fact that it's a labor of love. Every single game in our collection has a story. Sometimes it's I found that on Craigslist before the next guy and showed up first. But more times it's a little bit more romantic story. And
we could tell you 100. We only have time to tell you one, and a very short version of one. And I was thinking we should tell a funny one. But then there's another one that's sad, but it makes us look like total fucking assholes, so it's still funny. So you get kind of the salty and sweet together. So I'm Jewish. I'm sorry, I'm Jewish, I'm allowed to say this. I was raised by Abe Mendelson, who helped build Beth Shyam and Hightstown, and I drew this guy down. He wanted 800 for this Pac-Man, right? And when I said 750, 700, 650, I'm on Craigslist with this guy, going hard, right? Finally, I get him to commit to $600 under the pretense that I would have another guy with me to bring the thing up to a set of stairs, because kind of an older guy, he didn't really have it in him to bring it out. And I said, absolutely, I would. I've got another guy right here.
You're the other guy.
So we show up to this guy's place.
Now, in our defense, we have picked up 1 million games just by ourselves in our Subaru Outback, so this doesn't seem like that big of a deal. We show up and the guy has a pristine house. The walls have never been breathed upon, and the cabinet, which actually turned out to be somewhat of a repro cabinet, so it's a CRT monitor, a big computer monitor in it, and his pristine basement stairs go down and a platform, and then down a little bit more, and then a platform.
And I walk in and everything's pink. You got a pool table, you got like a little cotton candy machine that's pink, a popcorn machine. It's delightful down there, right? And I see the Pac-Man at the end of the room, and I'm thinking, here's the 600 large, and I'm gonna walk out of here with this thing. And then Meg starts asking questions.
So I say, hey, that's a really nice pool table. And he says, well, thank you. It was my 50th birthday present from my wife. And I say, oh, well, she must really love you. And he said, yeah, this Pac-Man was her 50th birthday present from me. And I said, geez, it didn't go over well. She's selling it. He's like, just last year I gave it to her. And I said, what she didn't like. I make some sort of asshole-ish joke. And he goes, no, she passed away.
And this is, mind you, after I've gone on the internet, 3, ping pong, negotiations with this guy for the last 3 hours. And I felt terrible about it, but I didn't feel as bad then, because right afterwards I realized we were going to need every bit of his help to get the damn thing up the stairs. So he has to take apart the Pac-Man. It's late. He has to take it apart.
3 hours and like 17 of his screwdrivers later, we all 3 of us shared a beer because we had to deconstruct the entire machine to get it up the stairs.
And I'm not used to pivoting stuff either. And Meg is actually the muscle sometimes, and it was a rough climb. And I was trying to get it up, and this dude wasn't feeling it.
So each one of our games, they're not all so dramatic, but each one of our games have a story. So a lot of the people that come into the arcade, they want to know what the best performers of the arcade are. Hey, what do people play the most? And the answer is there's a demographic for every game. So it's pretty hard to say. If the older gentleman, 50s, 60s, come in, shaking his pockets with his quarters, he's usually looking for Defender, sometimes Galaga.
Robotron.
In fact, when I need to do my laundry, I open Galaga, because usually the guys don't listen to me. They come up to the front and I say like, hey, how you doing? Welcome to high scores. They just keep walking and dig into their pockets, and I wait until they sink a quarter in, and then I tell them how it works because we're all on free play. So
20s and early 30s is always some iteration of Street Fighter. Women like Miss Pac-Man and Centipede. We just, I'm sure that there's women like Terminator 2
Black
also,
folks
but
like Punch Out in Athens. They walk. Does that happen all the time? Yeah. Oh yeah, they walk in and go, oh there, they got Punch Out every single time.
you can set your watch to it, and it's a
Women
good
like
thing.
Tempest and Centipede, and yeah, we've got a game for everybody basically. But these, I guess you would say are the best performers of the arcade. If we were working on quarters, these are probably the ones that would grab them. Street Fighter, it's difficult to say which Street Fighter. Probably Street Fighter 2, but
I'd say that or Third Strike. So to move on, guys, we're here to talk about what makes the games classics, and part of the reason why we spend so much time restoring them, keeping them maintained, displaying them for the public, and for not a whole lot of money. And I think it's because we see something that a lot of other people see, but the grand majority of people kind of dismiss these games as relics of the past. And the presentation is called Citizen Kane's in the Arcade, just to crystallize what that means. I love Citizen Kane. I thought it was a great movie. I got a lot of buddies that got good taste. They can't sit through it with me, and I understand that. But if it weren't for films like that, that always pop up in like the top movie of all time, right? A lot of things wouldn't have been discovered. It was a foundational in cinema, right? Everything, anybody who knows anything about it knows it, from the lighting to the cameras showing the power relationships of the characters on screen. It set the stage for a lot of other stuff. And as we know, cinema in general has gone down a lot over the years, or at least I think so. And when you look at what makes a game classic, something like Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, one of the first platformers ever. Even the Street Fighter series, which I don't love as much because I'm a little older, but I noticed that was just a spearhead for the fighting game genre. And I think it's important we don't forget these things. And a lot of times in gaming, like we said before, the 1982 law, even though now kids are blowing each other to smithereens with blood and guts everywhere, and the televisions, flat screens, the same thing that keeps people prejudiced against these old games kind of stood in our way. And I think that these games have a lot to offer. And these are the originals, and anything that's been taken far from the originals tends to get some impurities, which we see today in a lot of the games.
So we'll talk a little bit about how the magic happens. What's inside an arcade cabinet?
Hey there, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you about how the arcade machines actually work on the inside. While each cabinet is pretty different and varied and unique on their own, you'll generally find three pieces of equipment that are similar on the interior. There's the power supply, which is going to be pulling your alternating current from your wall outlet and converting it into DC voltage for use by the PC board. The PC board, or printed circuit board, is actually going to be your main board for all the games, so it controls all the programming and processing data for that. Originally, or the older models, they have a lot of different variations on the PC board. Later into the 90s, they moved into a more standardized version called a JAM, which made things easier with just one simple connector you can put any sort of board into and get the cabinet working. Last most important part is the monitor, the CRT. These are obviously older technology that aren't around anymore. In fact, they just stopped producing CRTs altogether. There's also a neck board and monitor chassis attached to these tubes, which controls all the circuitry going into them, and those need to be worked on all the time. Another part of the arcade cabinet that you would be really familiar with is the control panel. This is the panel that houses the user interface components for the machine, so you have your joysticks and your buttons on them. Generally, this is what the underside looks like right here. There's going to be a lot of switches, ground wires, action wires going every which way. It can get a little confusing. There's actually two types of switches that are used in these games. There's the leaf switch, which is an older model. They're generally more reliable, but a little bit harder to replace because they're soldered in. And you have the micro switches, which are pictured here. These are less reliable. They do fail after a certain amount of time, but they're used in a lot of applications for many different machines, so they're easy to get a hold of.
And it's important to note that here we always try to keep with whatever the game was created with. So if it was The Simpsons and has leaf switch buttons, we try to always keep that because you can feel, the feel's different. A micro switch, you know, is a little bit more clicky, a little bit more like something you feel in a Street Fighter, where it's a little bit more of a rolling action if it was a leaf switch micro switch or leaf switch. So we do try to always stay original wherever we can.
Of course, things do fall apart and you have to replace them. The most common failure in these machines, as you might guess, are the mechanical parts. Anything that's moving on a machine is liable to break down over time. So you have your joysticks, your buttons, those generally need to be replaced. Luckily, there are a lot of people who do reproduction parts. So for things that aren't in production anymore, businesses have gone bankrupt, and so there are these parts that people are still producing to put pieces in them. There's the power supplies. A lot of the older machines use linear power supplies with large transformers that are a bit bulkier and had a lot of moving parts to them. Sometimes those can be switched out to a switching power supply unit. It's more modern, very cheap, affordable, easy to configure most of the time. Some of the modern board components, like I said, there are actually two boards on each CRT, a neck board and a monitor chassis. Some of the electrical components on there, such as capacitors, diodes, and transistors, can be replaced with modern electrical parts that do pretty much the same thing. And transistors are of particular importance to the vector games, which are another interesting topic.
A huge pain in the ass. These are some of the best games, in my personal opinion, that were ever created. So when we talk about vector games, vector monitors, there are things like Asteroids, Tempest, 1983 Star Wars, which is my favorite, Major Havoc, Space Duel, Battlezone. You know, you can usually point them out because they have this kind of graphic where it's created by a laser, either on a horizontal or a vertical plane, and you know, they used what they had at the time to create these 3D vector images. They're also called XY monitors because basically the electron gun draws images based on the voltage that goes into the game board. So either positive or negative makes it go left, right, up, down. And the transistors that Jonathan talks about are, you know, there's two on either side of the monitor chassis. That one controls the vertical, one controls the horizontal, and they tend to blow all the time and make the whole monitor go dark. So basically, you know, we call them burning candles because somebody once told that to us. They said basically, you know, with raster monitors that you'd see in a Donkey Kong or something like that, the cathode ray tube monitors, you'd see, you can bring them back to life to some degree. You can rebuild the chassis, you can rejuvenate the tubes that are in them. With vector monitors, it's kind of when they're gone, they're gone. So, you know, when they're gone, they're LCDs, basically.
And that's why it's so important that we work on them. We try to get as many as we can, because vector monitors, when you see one, if you didn't grow up in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and you see one of these things, you have to know that it's more than just a different monitor. The look that they had with the different brightness of the light and the way they drew graphics to sometimes be 3D, pop out at you, that image was synonymous with the future. It was synonymous with video games. It was synonymous with this brand new culture that was just kind of sweeping everybody up when video games first came out. So it's a really tough thing to have to lose when you want to celebrate the history of video games.
So speaking of burning candles, some parts can't be replaced, and you know, this picture's up here just because I'm still looking for the person who did this. So if anybody made some sort of jumpy moves or anything when I put that up, does it look familiar to anybody? But you know, we try to have a balance between a museum and a playable arcade, right? Because the games are 30, 40 years old, and we have to kind of play that because we want it to be fun for everybody, but we also like to keep our games in the kind of condition where you walk in and you're not reminded of your own age either. You know, the games look like it was in 82, 84, and you don't walk in feeling like, damn, this is old, I'm old, this shit sucks, you know? Like, so, you know, we like to keep everything up here so you relive your childhood.
And we all like beer. You know, we get the question asked to us, why not beer, right? We all love beer, but the truth is, man, is we didn't need it when we were 10 or 11. I don't think that it's going to hurt anybody to have one entertainment option where alcohol is not even offered to you. Secondly, we don't want to fuck up our machines. We don't want anybody spilling any of their goddamn IPA down our Donkey Kong hole and ruining our PC board because fuck you. And then the most important reason I think is just, you know, we're about about the games first. So if we did have a bar, we probably wouldn't have a Shenmue machine or a Zelda machine because our minds are on the games.
Hey, speaking of, how do we bring classics into the future?
Have you heard of Breath of the Wild? Okay. The thing is that the new generation of kids that are coming up, I was a teacher of young kids, they like stuff that's different than ours. So we have to build the bridge to the memories that even kids, when I say kids in their 30s and 20s, were playing consoles at home. They weren't in the arcades most of the time. So how can we bring their nostalgia into a public space? The first thing we did, besides the Fix-It Felix machine, which I'll mention, Sega Saturn Nights into Dreams and Sega Dreamcast Shenmue. In their own dedicated cabinets, they're all skinned with the art. And how many people heard of Shenmue on the Dreamcast? So anybody who's actually played that game, knows that it's even if you don't like it, you have to acknowledge how special it is, like an open world game before GTA 3. We thought you can play in an arcade. Your character can go inside an arcade and play in an arcade. So in our arcade, you can play as a character going into an arcade, playing an arcade game, and that's a cool enough reason to do it. We got a Knights machine, the Sonic Team, the only game they made for the Saturn that I know about that was worth a damn, with all purple and pink buttons, and I just think that shit's cool as hell.
The buttons glow. And this summer's project was the Zelda Project. So a lot of, despite what people coming into the arcade, trying to impress their dates, try to say, Zelda didn't exist for the arcade. So every once in a while, some guys come in and they go, "Oh shit, I used to play this back in the day." I don't think that happens. But we created these two for our summer project this year. They are obviously inspired by the gold cartridge that everybody wanted when they were kids. Anybody who was a fan of Zelda, and we created basically NES emulators in solid gold arcade machines.
So it plays like 100 of the best NES games that everybody remembers, many of them 2 players. And if you can't get yourself an NES Mini, you can always go to High Scores and play it in the golden shimmery machine.
And you can't get yourself an NES Mini because they made like 5. Something like that. So the build itself took 12 weeks. That's 6 coats of automotive paint on that. They're solid gold with gold sparkles. We have them on the floor at both of our arcades. We actually partnered up with different guys for the programming. The carpentry is a guy up in some Roseville, California. The graphic design was actually a fellow who did the golden Zelda cab himself originally. And then the printing and everything was done locally. So what's inside?
So the inside, the brains of it running, like Meg said, was an NES emulator. We have it running on a Raspberry Pi. For those of you that don't know, a Raspberry Pi is just a small, tiny form factor computer. It runs Linux-based programs, and it has enough power to run basic applications like a simple game emulator. We loaded it with RetroPie, which is an Arch Linux-based build, which comes preloaded with a number of emulators. So if you want to get interested in doing some retro gaming yourself and you have a knack for computers, you might check out the RetroPie. I highly recommend it. While RetroPie has a front end called Emulation Station that they use, we actually went with a different front end called Track Mode. The reason why is that track mode is more suited for an arcade type setting. It allows you to hide a lot of the settings and menus. It makes it so that it's customer facing and the customer only sees really the games that you want to see.
And I know I gave that whole song and dance about the importance of keeping the right monitor and whatnot, but every once in a while, you see a TV on the side of the road, you don't pick it up, you gotta go somewhere else. So we do have LCDs in these 2 Zeldas. We didn't feel 100% about it though. So what we did was we used the RetroPie to add in software that adds scan lines and rounded text at the corners. They actually have this available to you so that it emulates to the best degree, mimics the look of a CRT.
We also we discovered that, maybe other people have tried it, but we found that with a piece of plastic, a thin piece of plastic, you can actually cook it in the oven on a frame to have the plastic melt and dip to add that actual curvature when you mount it on an LCD. So that combined with the scan lines, brightening up the screen, giving it rounded edges digitally, it's never going to be a CRT, but those things are dead, and we've got to find a way to push these plastics into the future, even if we don't love the way we have to do it.
So what you see there on the far left is the side profile of a CRT monitor. In the middle, the actual picture that we took is a plexi mold that we made. Basically, no children and pets were harmed, but we had every window in our apartment open because what we did was meld this concave mold that gives the curve of the CRT when you look from it from the side, and that combined with the RetroPie effects really does a great job to kind of mock up that rounded CRT look. So
I think we're out of time, guys.
Yeah, this is how to find us. We have a public arcade. It's $5 an hour, $10 all day to come and play. All the games are set to free play. One in Park Street, one in Hayward, and social media, of course. Does anybody have any questions for us?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Any questions from anybody?
What's your gem? What's your favorite one?
Our favorite what?
What's the gem of your collection?
Got so many, man. Swimmer, Food Fight, Major Havoc, iRobot, stuff that we never thought we'd find.
Probably the
P1.
most expensive one in our collection is Discs of Tron, which cost us about $7K because we've gotten some dizzy.
They couldn't fit all the
anymore.
content into the Tron game to release it with the movie, so they later released a game called Discs of Tron with a lot less units being put out to arcades, so it's hard to find. A lot of fun.
Any other questions? Anybody? We were just that compelled? Okay, cool. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks so much for having us, guys. We really appreciate it.
Here for high scores, you guys. We're going to take a quick 15-minute break and we'll be back.